All right, my space friends, welcome. Welcome everybody. How you doing today? It is the Launch Sequence Podcast, episode, what are we, 109 today. 109 we've been going. And we're going to have a bit of a talk, folks. We're halfway through the year. It's 2023. Some of us came into this year optimistic, some of us came into the year pretty disappointed. But overall, it's time for us to do a little checkup on what the year is looking like and what we can expect for the rest of it, because there's a lot of features and ships that are kind of up in the air, sort of possibilities, but we're not fully sure on that stuff yet. So I brought in Casa Black, another YouTuber who does some fantastic work on tracking the progress tracker and keeping up with what they're doing with features and where they're passing around responsibilities. Thank you so much for joining me today, man.
Nope. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Of course, dude. And I've been wanting to have you on for like most of the year. I know you had some pretty major YouTube problems at the beginning of the year, right? What happened there?
Yeah. So February. So little thing here. I only go into work like physically one day a week. 1 day a month, excuse me. So this one day in February that I had to go in, like at 6:45 in the morning, I get this message on my phone saying that my password had been changed for YouTube, or my Google account for YouTube. And all of a sudden, so I go on there, I click, change the password, was completely locked out like within seconds. Like I literally got this thing and was just locked out. And so I'm trying my best on my phone to try to get this resolved, and I just couldn't get it. And so I literally had to wait almost the whole 8-hour day to get through work to be able to get home to try to get it going. And yeah, my channel was completely just taken over by, it was, oddly enough, it was some sort of like Tesla, spam garbage.
I've seen a couple of those.
Yeah. So, but they completely just turned my channel into, this Tesla thing, uploaded a video, which immediately got struck down for some reason. So then my channel just completely just went out. And so that took about 2 weeks to get resolved.
So That's so annoying, man. Like,
yeah.
And it's just like, it's so weird too. I mean, I know people love their Teslas, but come on. That's a lot.
Yeah, I guess it was just like, it's a hot topic, so that's why they changed. I don't know. Yeah. I have no idea. But
no, I've seen that happen to a couple other channels. Weird that it does, but I'm glad you got your channel back. And have things started to pick back up, or have you gotten back to where you were?
Yeah, I was trying to hit this goal this year of like basically doubling my subscriber count to where I hit 10,000. And so like I was like, okay, so by mid-year I need to be at 7,500, and that right there kind of wrecked that month. But I've kind of picked it back up, and I'm still on track. So I'm hoping to get there.
Well, that is good, dude. I'm glad to hear it. Thank you again for joining me. This is the Launch Sequence Podcast, folks. If you've been here, you already know this is our space game weekly podcast, and generally we end up talking about Star Citizen. Like this week we will, but if you want to stick around, subscribe, maybe we'll leave a review or a rating. We do get into some other space games, particularly Starfield coming up. Are you looking at Starfield at all?
No, not particular. I mean, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of what it's going to do for Star Citizen. I think it'll do great things for all space games. So but I don't generally play solo. If they do a multiplayer mod later on, I'll do it, because I usually play with my wife on the weekends. Yeah. So anything serious like that, I'm going to play with her. So
okay, so you are a pretty strong multiplayer player, like you.
Yeah, MMO is my background, basically. Yep.
Oh, okay, cool. So I like to kind of get that sort of idea of every guest that comes on here. What got you into Star Citizen? How did you get towards this game in particular?
So I also do survival games as well, and I have like a pretty good server friends that we would play like Ark Survival and things like that. And I was looking for something space, and I had one of them recommend this to me, who had been following and actually playing the game for a while, because I was kind of like, what about No Man's Sky? And they're like, no, that's not going to give you what you want. If you want multiplayer, you're going to want to come here. So that's what got me here, and that was probably like a little over 2 years ago now. So
okay, so you're actually relatively new to the project. It's weird to say 2 years is new, but like we've been around for a while. What have been your thoughts on it so far, just after jumping in? I mean, obviously you like it, you made content for it, but like, what was the journey of getting into this game?
So basically, yeah, I started out like most people. I started off with, I think I got a Mustang at first, and then I went, within 2 days, I was like, no, 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 this thing ain't going to work. And I like the upgrade process. So I was like, okay, I'll upgrade to, and I went to the Titan, enjoyed the Titan, used that to earn money, and bought a Cutlass in game, enjoyed the Cutlass. And then I wanted to try mining. And so I somehow skipped the Prospector and earned enough money to get the Mole. And so, yeah, so I did that. And that was my process of learning to play. I hadn't put a lot of money into it at that point. And then, but what got me was the community. Like, I literally was like, I don't know, a couple 100,000 away from the Mole, and somebody just gifted it to me. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. They just gave me the money right then. And then all the help I got from learning, because, there's a steep learning curve with this.
Oh yeah.
And so because of the community, it attracted me more to the game. And I was at the point where I was wanting to get to do something with YouTube. I had a channel that had been sitting there for years that had enough. I had met the 1,000 subscriber thing like, years ago, but it just been sitting there. And so I was like, well, let me see if I can try to do something and try to give back to the community, because I'm someone who is a trainer at work. And so I try to use that to make guides. And so that's how I kind of got into this whole crazy thing.
Well, yeah, and actually getting into that, what kind of content for the audience do you make for Star Citizen?
So I started off with just some basic beginner guides. I worked into loadouts. I know we have like Urkel, and you've got like Subliminal who does loadouts, but I wanted to try to throw some of my my graphical design knowledge that I have. And so I've made more graphical looking loadouts that are supposed to be quicker and really more aimed at beginners. So that's where I kind of started. And then I was like, that kind of led into ship reviews. And then last year I was looking and I was like, I'd really like to learn more about this roadmap thing. And so in the fall, I kind of started tracking on my own the changes in the roadmap, and, using, I guess, my skills from work also to like try to track things and look for trends and things like that. And so I kind of like started trying to specialize in that. I don't think it's like my name is real synonymous with that at the moment, but I've been really trying. And every 2 weeks I put out something on the roadmap to do that.
Well, folks, if you are looking for a good detail by detail tracker, there you go. Links are down in the show notes. Check that out, because to be honest, there's so much. Like, you can't go to any one YouTuber for all the stuff, right? You could go to somebody who can put out the news every week or every day, but they're not going to be able to keep up with all the little changes to the progress tracker. So thank you for taking that role.
Yep. No. And thank you, because you've been a valuable resource when it comes to, especially your historical stuff. When I recently watched your CitizenCon, even though it was from last year, like your breakdown of every CitizenCon. I mean, it was almost embarrassing, honestly, for CIG, because I mean, it was so like crazy, but eye-opening, and it also lets you know what to look out for in the future.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting how badly they handled some things in the past, especially like marketing and development stuff, and then reflecting on how it looks now, because they've made some strides. I was going through making that video, and every single CitizenCon I was like, please just like don't do anything this one, and like get to that point, and I'm like, okay,
don't do it, do it.
But I think last year's CitizenCon was the first time that they finally avoided anything major kind of throwing them off their game. I don't think they did anything last year that really stood out. Can you think of anything?
What stood out to me was how odd it was that Chris Roberts came on at the very end, because I remember watching it live and I thought it was over. And I had actually, I don't know what I was doing, but I stepped away. I was probably going to go play or something. And I came back out to the living room, and he was on there talking, and they were showing off new footage. And I was like, this was odd that they did it this way. But it was still cool because he didn't say, oh, this is coming in spring or whatever. So
yeah.
That's what stood out to me.
And at least it wasn't like scandal level. The whole industry's making what's it called? Making articles about it. Because like when they did that whole land claim thing, oh my gosh, every news outlet was like, oh, they're selling land, folks. You know what that means. But anyways, we've been reminiscing. We've been going back. Let's dive into the topic and talk about what is coming up. Actually, that was a joke. We're still going to talk about what was happening before. First, I want to know how you feel about 2023 so far. Because, like I said, there were a lot of feelings going into this year. A lot of things could have been possible. PES kind of put a stopper on a lot of stuff. What was your mindset going into this year's development?
So going into the year, that's when I had first started following the map. And so December, you're seeing all these things that had been completed, or they showed completed. And then we saw that Pez was delayed. Like, they were just starting to really test it in like around Christmas time, I think.
Yeah.
And so my thought process was, okay, this one feature is holding up, this whole update. These other teams have to be finishing some of this stuff. And maybe 318 is going to have like a lot more than what we thought. And so I'm sitting there looking at all these different features. One of my big things was I was thinking 319 was going to be the UI update. Like, I just was hoping that was going to be a thing, because when you looked at the roadmap, Star Map was done, or it showed done. The Moby Glass stuff was looking good. You had like the quantum travel. They had like said that stuff was done, like the new visuals or whatever. So I was like, UI should be looking really good. Hopefully we're going to have this massive UI update, which I'm really looking forward to when they actually do it. And of course, 319 came and went, nothing. So, me thinking that Pez was holding up all these other teams and we were going to see all these massive features kind of thrown in is what really was like, I set myself up for that, looking back now. But ultimately, I'm just happy that when Pez came out in March, it looked nasty, And I was beginning to wonder, were they even going to get through all these issues this year? So for them to be looking good 319.1 to where it's actually playable, I'm impressed with that. But again, let down by the lack of other features.
Yeah, I definitely would say I expected, like, we knew 318. 319, because it was on the same code branch, seemed like it was going to be kind of minor, have a little, a few interesting features. But I was really expecting things to pick up after 319. Like you, was looking at where they were at the beginning of the year and which teams had kind of like stalled on putting out some of that work. Things like the fact that we got the first version of the cargo refactor and they had already started talking about the next level of that made me think that like within a few months, they probably would have been well underway with the engineering work. Whereas right now it feels like we've got another 5-6 months. And some of the other stuff, it just, I agree with you. I think it felt like some of the teams were further along than they are. Of course, locations teams always doing great. Underground facilities are doing good. New outposts are doing well. Although I think they did delay those from 319 to 320.
You are correct. Yeah. I was thinking, anything that Montreal touches is usually gold. So, the fact that they're on underground facilities, derelicts, and also one of the Inside Star Citizens with them, probably it was March or April, I think April, they mentioned that, it took them 6 months or so to make this one, but now they could just duplicate that and put it everywhere. And I was like, oh yeah, 320 is probably looking like we're going to see quite a few new derelicts out there that are going to be maybe something similar to Whistler's Crypt or the Ghost Hollow. Yeah. But that doesn't look like it's coming. It looks like I don't know if it's coming for 320 or not. We don't know yet, but it doesn't quite look like it.
Isn't that weird though? Because it did get delayed for 319. I think they originally put an ISC out in January talking about it coming to 319, and then they had another one titled something like Settlers of Stanton, which came out in I think March or May or April, and that one said it was coming out in 320, but now it's not on the release tracker. It's that's a weird one too, because it is location based.
Yeah, I know. That one was kind of weird. And I was thinking, like, I remember when I just saw it the other day and I couldn't believe it got pushed out. Yeah, the derelicts got pushed out. Oh, no, actually, the derelict points of interest is still showing third week of May that they finished to work on it, but they haven't really done anything else with it. So that's kind of weird that they haven't done anything.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think I'm like you. I thought salvaging that we may actually get vehicle munching in like a 320. I was thinking definitely something for the what is it? I lost my train of thought there. The cargo. I thought we are going to see more cargo happening. Especially with the whole sea coming, and so far nothing on that either. So.
I was thinking at least one of the major professions would see something in 320, whether that be hull munching or
Hmm.
the cargo refactor or vehicle tractor beams or something, bounty hunting. But yeah, no,
Hmm.
I think we're still missing some stuff on the release tracker.
Hmm.
Definitely those derelicts seem like a good chance of a late addition there.
Yeah.
But let's go back again in the year and I want to know, do you think besides the fact that we haven't maybe seen a big enough or as big a 319 as you thought, does the year still feel like a good year development wise to you?
Um, I think it's going to depend on what we get with 320. Because I mean, and we still don't know what the release cadence is going to be after 320. Like, are they going to do a 321, which I think they will? Are they going to delay 4.0 and then maybe we'll see more in 321 and 322 as like kind of like sympathy for that, like a sympathy patch, I guess. But ultimately, I think 320 to me is what's going to come down, because you got to think 319 was just a branch off 318.
Yeah.
It was kind of rushed because of Invictus. Which I kind of called that back in early January. I was like, they're going to do a 319 for Invictus, and everybody's like, you're crazy. They're not going to do a 319. They're going to be doing 318.5 or 10 or whatever. And I was like, no, they're going to do a 319.
I mean,
And
technically it's the same thing anyways, right?
it is, but yeah, especially with being on the same branch. But I figured they were still at least going to call it that. And so, but 320 to me is that going to be a different branch? Is it going to have these new features, which I think it is? So to me, if they need to add a couple more things for me to say that yes, this has been a good year. And again, we're not going to know much until CitizenCon either, as far as the rest of the year.
Well, what about just taking the first half of the year in a vacuum, like comparing it to first half of last year or the year before?
Oh, first half of this year compared to last. Um, to me, Pez was so not game breaking. It was game breaking, but groundbreaking. Uh, for all that it's given us, and the fact that they got it working by 319, I think it's a good year so far. In terms of that, it's not as much as I'd like to see. I'm not definitely going to say that, but I think ultimately it's a good year.
Yeah. I would say it's funny because 318 was supposed to be here last year. So, like, if it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
this year, then it wouldn't have felt like a good first half. But then everything would have been different. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it certainly is kind of like it's been good, but I expected better. And I think it's not even the actual features coming in that I expected to be better. I was expecting 319 to kind of look how it did. And I think what it did
Mm-hmm.
with mining was a lot bigger than I thought it would be. But
Yeah.
the year overall, or the first half of the year overall, feels like it was more the news that disappointed me than anything. The information. We didn't get almost any news about server meshing. We got told
Mm-hmm.
nothing about the economy. We don't really know what's happening with the cargo refactor, other than the fact that they're bringing in the Hull C and freight elevators.
Mm-hmm.
Master modes is just now going into testing, which is nice. We'll talk about
Yeah.
that. But like the other stuff, the platforming we saw, the quantum boost feature,
Mm-hmm.
the interior map stuff, that's all still kind of sitting in monthly reports and not getting as much showtime in ISC, which I think is what
Mm-hmm.
was really lacking this last couple months.
Yeah, I'd say ISCs to me have been a letdown. Because I was really hoping we get a sprint report, and we didn't. And I feel like we've had a little bit more fluff on the ISCs than we normally have, maybe. We're definitely not getting the news we need. I think that, a server meshing update, even if it's to say, hey, it's still chugging along. The fact that they've dropped the road to pyro messaging is kind of worrying a little
Yeah,
bit
they didn't
too.
say anything about that either.
Yeah. So some of that stuff to me is worrying. And you're right. The communication this year is definitely not where it needs to be.
Yeah, but at the same time, getting salvage and then mining in one update after the other was nice. And
Mm-hmm.
the cargo gameplay that we're seeing now, like the game plays better than it ever
Mm-hmm.
has when it works. It
Yeah.
feels more tactile, more interactive. I've been enjoying that. Definitely been enjoying the game more than I did last year. But yeah, it's just wish there was a little bit more with it.
Yeah. I'm definitely impressed. I mean, you say I came in, 2 years ago, which is true. And looking at what I remember there being missions for then versus now, there's a lot more missions on there to do. There's a lot more content as far as a player to come in, to where even if, if you were to focus on something, depends on your play time too. But like for me, I find some weeks, like I was doing delivery missions and I thought, oh, I'd breeze through those and have that rep done and, a few days. And it took me like almost 2 weeks to really get in there, go to all and do all the different delivery missions that were out there and get the rep up. And I was like, okay, well, that's kind of a bit of content, not to mention going and doing something else and working on that reputation. So, as far as content and things to do in the verse, it's definitely increased and picked up.
Yeah. I can't wait till there's more stuff to actually want to earn money for,
Yeah.
like things that are worth finding and buying, because they've been kind of pulling the weapons out and putting them into loot boxes and stuff, but that still just doesn't really do it for me.
Well, it doesn't do it for me either because it's so random. Like if you really want something, you don't have a way to just definitely seek it out for the most part.
Yeah. That's what I've really liked about the mining update is like we actually have something to know is true in the game. I remember one of the big things that's been debated for such a long time is like if mineable rocks have weak spots. And that's like one of those cases of where we don't actually know if we're supposed to look for it. I know somebody cleared that up on Spectrum recently, but it's like we didn't know what moon to go to get what material, so you couldn't expect to do something a certain way. You couldn't assign a mission to go get this stuff. And now that they've started to build that into mining, it's really nice. And I can't wait to see that sort of balancing and salvaging and I don't know, refining, I guess, could be a thing.
Yeah. To me, mining has been like one of the probably the brightest spot of this whole year, and what probably pulled this year out, especially 319 from just being kind of dull. Like mining really made 319 kind of stand out a little bit better than probably what it would have.
Yeah, that made mining an actual thing you can do. Like you could get somebody who's never played the game, bring them in, throw them in your mole, and they can have a good time. Just helping you out with mining for a couple hours. And I love that. That's good. That plus the new player experience definitely is helping the new player, experience.
Yep, for sure. Yep.
All right. Let's talk about what's coming next. 2023 first half was decent. And we were expecting some very good things for this upcoming half, given where we were in December. Now that we've kind of reevaluated and changed our expectations, things are toned down a bit, but I'm sure there are still some pretty good things you're expecting to come in the next couple of updates, whatever they might be called. What are some things that come to your mind right away?
Well, we just, I hate to bring up leaks, but we just seen a few things pop up recently that may indicate engineering and maybe a little bit of bounty hunting. Like I saw, I was watching Board Gamer's video the other day when he was mentioning mining, and I was like, "Why are you talking? I'm not mining, but bounty hunting." I was like, "Why are you talking about bounty hunting?" Like it shows on the map that it got pushed back, but we could see some features of bounty hunting coming in because we've seen. I don't want to talk about leaks here, but there's a couple of things out there that kind of point to that, as well as engineering. So like those were things that a few days ago I thought were definitely not going to be here, but we might start to see some of that trickle in. And even though they show pushed out on the roadmap, there could be versions of that are still like implemented into the game, which is one of those weird things about the roadmap. So
it's like the new player experience. It shows work out until like October right now, but we already have it in game. So I was hoping that might be the case with freight elevators. Please.
Yeah. I know freight elevators. So it's like, man. But yeah, it's funny you mentioned the new player experience because I saw it when it moved, and I was like, I wonder if they're gonna just like copy some of what they did. Like if they're able to, like it's modular now, and they're able to just like put that over into the other cities. And that's what I was thinking they were doing. And then we saw on the monthly report this week that that's what they're doing. So that's cool. I'm glad they're doing that.
That is very good because I'm wondering what the plan is long term with that. Like, are they just going to say, okay, every planet that we put in the game for now is going to have a new player experience, or are they eventually going to strip it away from certain, because they can't put that in Pyro, right? Are they going to put it in Nyx? When is the next planet after the 4 in Stanton that gets that?
Yeah, I've been wondering. I've been curious about that myself. Like, whenever we go to select a system, are they just going to like allow a new player to select Pyro as a system, and where would they start at? Like, how would that work? Or is that like more like a survival type thing? You're like, hey, if you want the very hardest experience, select Pyro.
That would actually be really interesting. They're like, okay, you can start the game as a pirate. Good luck.
Yeah. Have fun with that.
Yeah. So let's see. we were talking about, gosh, there was something that the bounty hunting. You mentioned Board Gamer's video on that. Somebody had mentioned that he called it like bounty hunting 1.5. Can you shed some light on that? Because I don't actually know why it would be 1.5 instead of 2.
Because exactly, he was saying since it got pushed, it was basically been pushed back. Like overall as a feature, it's been pushed back to December. So we might see something, because they did mention in the Port Olisar video last week on was it ISC they showed that,
Yeah.
where they showed that there's going to be landing zones at all the major, above Atmo for the major planets. All those stations, they all have this bounty hunter part, on the station. So I think because of that, and because maybe he's an Evocati and he saw something, I don't know, but for whatever reason he made a whole video based on talking about bounty hunting, which I thought was odd. But now that we've seen a couple things come out, it's like, well, maybe he's right. Maybe we will see some things like maybe being able to knock players out or something, or capture them. But again, we don't have I know we don't have the on planet things, the stations to be able to take them and lock them up. So I don't know. Yeah, they have been showing it. I don't know how far along, but
one of the few things they have kind of consistently showed this year. Mm-hmm. It's weird though, because the most important thing to the bounty hunting is virtual AI, and nothing on that.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there was a little bit of virtual AI work that was on the monthly report. It looked like for some of that, but I don't see it as a complete feature. I don't know what a 1.5 would look like as far as bounty hunting goes, unless there's some new bounty hunting missions possibly, or they introduce another rep maybe. I honestly don't know what that would look like.
It's interesting. So I don't know what's going on with bounty hunting. To be honest, it was one of the things that I was expecting to go later into the year, if not the following year. Mm-hmm. So I'm not super confident in that showing up this year. It'd be cool if we saw some updates on it, but I would really prefer if they just waited until all of that was ready. Virtual AI, restraining of players, whatever system they need for players to respond. Like, don't put it in halfway. Give us that full profession,
Yeah, I mean, that could be something they do, is they decide to say, well, we'll let you do players. We'll let you live capture players maybe as maybe to test out how you're going to knock players out, or how you're going to, move them about. That could maybe that's what a 1.5 is,
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Let's talk about engineering. That was one that you said you were kind of seeing some signs of as well. You think that might be something we get this year? I
mean, I honestly didn't think so, but possibly, because there's been a little bit of hints that there's parts, things that are starting to show up. I don't know if I don't think it would be for Arena Commander that you would see this in, as maybe they're going to test it out there. Possibly, maybe, I don't know. But a lot of those things were scheduled to be done, I think, in August, and they've only recently been pushed back. And I want to say they were pushed back to like October now. So it's not like they moved it all the way out to December like they did some of the things. But I don't know. And again, is it going to be a full engineering, or is it going to be like, where they're only implementing a few things? I honestly don't know.
Yeah. So do you think that, I believe the ships they've explicitly said will have it are the Hull A, the Ares, and the Hammerhead. They haven't mentioned any other ships that I'm aware of since then. Do you think that they would put it in other ships, or should we just stick to the idea that it's only going to be those first 3?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really limited on what they added into as an initial release. I'm not sure like how much work it's going to go, or even which ships could. I know the Carrack would probably be another good choice, maybe, but I don't know what that would look like for some of the smaller ships.
Yeah, I do wonder if the ships that we see in the game this year are going to launch with it. Is every ship that comes out after this is implemented going to launch with it? Like we know a lot about the profession without knowing a lot about the gameplay itself. But engineering as a whole is really cool. And sounds like it's going to be in all the locations and just create a lot more gameplay. Is that something that you've been interested in doing in the game?
Definitely. Like I said, my wife is like basically my co-pilot. So being on a ship and us coming under attack, I know she would really enjoy going out there and, putting out fires or switching out, fuses or whatever it's going to be completely. So I'm definitely looking forward to it for that. I'm also in an org, so I would definitely be down to get on the hammerhead and be part of a big battle to where we're having to rush around and try to, put fires out, literally, So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Would you say, do you think that the ship trespass stuff got delayed to coincide with the role assignment that they're introducing with engineering? Do you think those are related at all?
I think they probably are. I think it's almost funny. It's like when they were talking about how difficult it was, I feel like they almost talked themselves out of releasing it whenever they were doing that because it's like, I mean, as they were talking about it, they were like, yeah, if you have a ship inside of another ship, I was like, that does sound really complicated. I think it turned out to be more complicated than they just initially thought because didn't they come out saying that trespassing? They didn't even bring that out in like an Inside Star Citizen. I think it was like a tweet or something or a mention in Spectrum is how they first initially said, hey, ship trespassing is going to be a thing, and I was like, oh, that'd be
Yeah, it
cool.
was something interesting like that. And then they just put it straight on the release tracker, release view.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens with that, but it's a bummer that it got delayed. It sounds like people were not very happy with it though. People were saying, I've heard folks say that like there was a lot of uproar about it on Spectrum. I don't know if you go on there. It's always uproar, I guess.
Yeah, I tend to. I mean, I'll go to Reddit and see what's being upvoted and see what the hot button issues are. Like every few days or so, I'm not following it drastically because one, I try to stay away from negativity as much as I can, but I do like to try to stay in the loop. And it's funny watching trends happen too because you'll suddenly see 4 videos come out about whatever the hot topic issue is, and definitely trespassing has been one of those things where people are not quite ready for it. Of course, pirates are ready for it because they're like, yeah, I'm going to be able to sneak on this ship and you ain't going to know I'm there. But a lot of other people are like, not so happy about that.
There's a lot of parts of this game that are like that are just going to absolutely destroy some people's gameplay when it gets implemented and they don't know that's coming up. Like even just physical cargo loading, I think is going to make a lot of people not really want to take part in that kind of stuff anymore, which is fine. I mean, that's how it's supposed to be. It's just a lot of realizations people are going to come to.
Yeah, I think Voidy just posted a tweet. Was it yesterday when he was saying, yeah, it's a lot of hard work to unload like a Hercules, like all of the various cargo pods on that.
Yeah,
I was like, yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, we need those bigger boxes. In fact, why don't we talk about like the cargo related stuff? We've got tractor beam tools, we've got vehicle tractor beams, freight elevators, different size SCU boxes. I won't include persistent hangars in there because I think that's something they're kind of splitting off from there. But those 4 things are like pretty big, and then of course the economy. What are you feeling right now on that topic?
I'm looking forward to seeing how it's going to come out, which would be great for an ISC to actually talk about these multiple boxes. Are we going to see those in 320? Because I mean, they were teased months ago now, and at this point, we definitely need them. Something like the mule would be very useful if they would actually allow it to pick these things up. Even the 1 SCU boxes that they're supposed to pick up, they can't do. Right now, the mule's only good for duping, so that's kind of sucks. But the rest of the cargo thing, like I'm on that page where I'm like, I'm interested to see how it works. But if it's moving 600 boxes off of a ship, granted, that's more for like an org than just like a solo or a duo type of situation. I don't know how, is it going to be so tedious that it ain't worth it? Until they actually allow you to pay NPCs to do it and you can factor all that into it. I'm not over enthused, but I definitely want it in the game.
I can see the first several versions of this being simulated timers. They don't have NPCs or anybody actually loading the boxes, and it just magically loads into your ship. But those things that you're mentioning, like those questions, are both things I really want to know, but also pretty clear reasons to me of how hard this is actually going to be to implement. They've got to figure out, if you're buying 60 SCU of something, or let's say 64 to make it easy, do they give you 2 32 SCU boxes that split up to cover all of the stuff you're carrying? Do you get 4 or I guess 8 SCU boxes because you
Right.
have that amount of balanced goods to put into your ship, like breaking up the goods into certain size boxes, making sure those boxes are on the ship.
Hmm.
It's kind of crazy. Like that
Yeah.
on its own feels like it could be a game. Space Truck
Right.
Simulator.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And I'm curious, I mean, how much are we going to be able to say, hey, instead of, 4 of those, I want one of these,
Yeah.
and then on top of that, the tractor beams, are we going to get that bigger tractor beam to where we could actually pick up one of those, the big long, container like boxes? I mean, like, how is that going to work and when are we going to see it?
Yeah. And then of course there are the missions, which I think are going to be pretty important because at first you don't really want to be the one who's going and buying this stuff and shipping it yourself. You kind of just want to get a mission to transport something somewhere, not put your own money on the line.
Yep.
How are these missions going to work if we have this method of shipping stuff to a space station and then shipping it down to a planet? How do they assign those missions to us?
Yep. Yeah. And I mean,
So
I just want to know what the whole sea, like, it's coming, but what are people going to be able to do with it?
yeah,
You know? I
yeah,
mean, really.
definitely. So are you thinking the whole C is definitely confirmed for 3.20?
Mhm.
From what you've been seeing, progress tracker, monthly report wise, that kind of stuff, do you think anything else would be coming with that? Or you think they're just going to drop the ship in the game and say, good luck?
I want to say that they, they should have more to it, but with their track record, I think it's just going to be dropped in, and maybe you'll be able to, find something really cheap that you can maybe fill it up with. It's just so much cargo. I can't even imagine,
Yeah.
like, some of the things that you can always find are still going to be. I mean, I know you can make profit on a huge batch of something like that, but I don't know. Like, I feel like even then, because of how the system works, that there's just not going to be enough.
At least we have a ship now that can go and trade things like scrap or waste or
Mhm.
titanium or just something. I guess titanium's not bad, but like something that's low high margin but like high quantity low margin and still make a pretty
Right.
good earning on it, because as of right now we have this like middle area where you're good to haul if you've got like a star lifter or a caterpillar or a
Hmm.
carrack or something. But if you've got something smaller like an MSR or a freelancer, it might not be as great. And we don't
Hmm.
we don't even talk about super big ships. So
Hmm.
yeah, hopefully the economy is like the most important thing that they need to update there.
Yeah, I'm hoping we see something. It'd be nice. I don't know what they would do. The only thing I could think of is they'd have to do some kind of adjustments with how things are going to be, like the quantities and everything. That's the only thing I can see them doing. There's nothing on the roadmap about this. So, I mean, they don't always have things on the roadmap that they're working on. So
And
maybe
definitely
there's
not
something
economy
else.
stuff. They like never
Definitely
put
not.
economy stuff on there.
Mm-mm, never. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that, and if they're just going to drop it in, or is it going to be something like refueling where it's barely used or barely touched, until they do something more with it.
I just can't imagine that they're gonna put that ship in and have it carry one SCU boxes. That's so many entities. If that thing
I know.
blows up, the whole server's gonna crash.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the whole reason I'm thinking. The whole reason that I think they're going to be, bringing in the bigger boxes with this. I feel like they have to, just because of the performance issue. And they said they've been
Right.
doing performance tests with the hull, so I'm assuming that's what they mean by that.
And then, like, if you think about that, if they're bringing in the bigger boxes, then they have to give us bigger tractor beams. So it's like
Exactly.
it, it feels like a domino effect
Hmm.
that hopefully leads up to freight elevators, but like at the very least means bigger boxes and tractor beams that can handle them.
Yeah, I've kind of lost faith in the freight elevators, because it was
Yeah.
originally like they had stopped working in March, got pushed back to September, and now it's back to December even further. So freight elevators, I feel like I don't know if they're even ready. Like, I feel like it's going to be pushed back again. I hope not, but like, I definitely don't see it this year.
All right. Well, we'll take a maybe for tractor beams and bigger boxes with the Hull C,
Hmm.
a probably not for the freight elevator, and a
Hmm.
gosh, we really hope so for an economy update. That's like, that
Yeah,
is, oh man, I would say besides the star map, that's like the number one thing I want them to talk about is the economy.
yeah, definitely. And I mean, if you'd asked me 6 months ago, I'd have been like, "Oh yeah, they're gonna have this, and that." But now this roadmap is just like completely just like turned me into like a downy clowny. There's no way. Like, I don't trust it at all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. they did a little bit of a, I won't say a U-turn, but they slowed down a bit on what was going on this year's development. Monthly reports still make everything sound great. That's the weird part.
Yeah, I would say this one, not the one in June, not so much. Like I was thinking there'd be a little bit something else, maybe spicier in there. Maybe just because the last couple had a few things
They
in there
were
that
very good, yeah.
felt good. But yeah, this last one, when they mentioned the SRV and they're like, it towed its first ships, and I was like, what? It just now towed its first ships? I'm like, and I was hoping it was going to be in 320, and
Yeah,
now
sometimes you get something like that, and you're like, that's
yeah.
great to hear, but I thought that had happened.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I definitely thought it had been towing ships, this whole time.
Like
Uh,
they said
because
something I was
work on that ended in February for the SRV, like the actual ship itself.
right.
Tractor beams, sure, has been, they've been steadily working on the vehicle tractor beams, but the actual work on the ship itself is, been done.
And even that work on the vehicle tractor beams, I think was, at least back when I covered it, it was scheduled to finish up around May or June, I think. So yeah, things have been regularly being pushed back throughout the last few months,
Yeah, for sure.
which we're all used to. And this is why they stopped doing their long distance roadmap, because we would have been, everything that we thought would have been coming out in a few months would not have been there.
Yeah, which I'm okay with that change. Like just seeing the very next one is better than them looking like liars or better than them looking bad, because the last thing I need to do is look bad, and their dates are the worst, like little things about the development. So
all right, let's talk about some of the stuff we saw from CitizenCon last year in that talk that you had mentioned. So there were a couple good things there: the EVA, the platforming and the ledge grab stuff, the interior map stuff, a little bit of UI things, and like the FPS scanning, and in the new interaction system. I think those are some of the big things that, like, it seemed like they were starting to test for Squadron, and we were hoping might come in this year. And I think he even mentioned some of that stuff on the letter from the chairman at the beginning of the year. Do you think any of that stuff we might see?
they just mentioned ledge grab in the monthly report, which to me that's gonna be a good thing because of how often you can get stuck in a cave or outside your ship.
Yeah.
So that alone is going to be a huge game changer. I mean, honestly, rocket backpacks would have, also eliminated some of that, but I believe someone told me that Chris Roberts said we would never have rocket backpacks in the games.
Little jump jets or something. Like,
yeah.
I still believe that our EVA systems should double as like some sort of a jet in atmosphere, so that you could soften your landing and stuff, or jump a little bit higher.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I wouldn't expect to just fly around like Rocket Man or something, but at least to be able to slow a descent, or something like that.
Yeah.
And give people parachutes. People have been asking for parachutes.
I don't see how parachutes could work though, with all the different atmosphere and stuff.
Yeah, which is probably why they haven't done it. But yeah, just throw the like a limited, maybe 30-second rocket pack. That's all you need.
Yeah, something simple, something like what we're seeing and what we've seen in Mass Effect, what we're seeing in Starfield. I mean, hate me for bringing all these other these casual RPG games in, but like it's nice to have a little bit of extra maneuverability like that.
Yeah.
What about EVA?
Yeah.
EVA Tier 2.
I mean, that looked good when they showed it off, and they haven't talked about it since. And it would be very nice. EVA has been a mess. I don't know if it was PEZ that changed it or what, but when you exit a ship now, a lot of times your body wraps around itself and
just rotate around your wrist like a just breaking.
Creepy looking, but like EVA really needs some work, and I don't know if that would fix those issues, or maybe just because of those issues they haven't brought it in yet. But I would really like to see it. Like, we definitely need it.
I think we might have seen mention of it in the either May or April monthly report. I was really hoping that it might be something that we see by the end of the year, but we haven't seen any more like video of it or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when ISC comes back, I'm not expecting a lot, because we know the news kind of dries up a lot between here and there because they want to save it all for CitizenCon. So it's definitely going to be, I think, a drought. I'm hoping we see something for 320 though. Like, they could definitely focus on that, and hopefully we see new things that we maybe aren't expecting yet. That's that would be nice.
Yeah. How about the UI stuff they showed? Interior map, mini map, FPS scanning, any of that?
I mean,
You've been
those
burned on
to
the UI
me.
now?
Yeah, I felt like I really, really thought that this was going to be something because I mean, it still shows completed. Like that work still shows completed. I think it's been touched on a little bit. They've had to do some adjustments in Squadron, and that's probably the only reason we haven't gotten it yet is because maybe it's not quite nailed down there. But for the most part, it looks like the work has been done for that, and it's just sitting there, or they're just testing it there. But there's, I mean, for new players, that is like the one of the most frustrating things for new players. Like my wife still, when she's trying to fly somewhere and she's trying to find that little point to click on, or she clicks on it and it won't set the route. Those things just infuriate her. And I mean, me, I've done it. I've worked around it so much. I know now, looking for OMs, manually, whatever. I know the workarounds, but new players, they're going to get frustrated if they can't even fly.
Yeah. And that's another point I'm seeing in the live chat. Another point in the favor of FPS scanning. There's a ton of stuff in this game that's interactable, and most of the things that are supposed to be still aren't. Your components in a ship, the components in a town, the interactable vehicles or tools and props that you find in a city, all of that kind of stuff has to be able to be identified, and being able to do some kind of a ping or a scan to make that stuff pop up is super important for learning how this game works. The interaction system, being able to look at something and have a little dialogue or a prompt that pops up and lets you know that you can interact with it are really important, and I think something that the game's been missing that would make it so much easier. But also as data running. I know we're not really talking about data running, but like I'm hoping that you'd be able to go down into a cave, scan the interior as like a explorer, and then store that data and like take it back somewhere and sell it.
Yeah. I mean, we're seeing you kind of have that with players now that are like selling salvage things. Well, it'd be nice to actually have it to where you could, send them the location instead of, saying in chat or having to, try to private message someone, where this hotspot is going to be located or joining up as a friend or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, being able to sell that. I mean, I've been flying to MSR a lot lately. And so every time I pass through those servers, I'm just like, oh, like I really would
Oh,
love
we
to do some
wish.
data running.
Yeah. How about Reputation this year? We know that Reputation stayed stagnant for a while. The mission features team seems to have gotten a hold of it now. And we have been waiting a long time for... Actually, that's one of the things on the progress tracker that says it was finished a while ago and never just got any updated work added to it. But AI reacting to you based on Reputation, do you think we could see something on that this year?
That's one of those things what I think is possible, especially with the mission feature team, because I mean, shout out to them. To me, ever since development has turned more towards Squadron, the mission features team has really been the ones that have kept us going with some of these new mission types have been great. Like they really have added so much to the verse, and they're able to pretty much keep up with those. And they're also probably they do so well. That's probably one of the reasons why we see them on ISC so much. So definitely a shout out to them for the hard work they do. And to me, they're like the MVPs just to be able to keep us going until the full team can come back and do stuff for the PU. But as far as Reputation coming into the verse, I mean, I think we could definitely see something there. I don't know what, like maybe salvage. There could be a salvage Reputation. I want to say I heard something about. Definitely when the bounty hunting comes back or it's added, the new stuff, there'll definitely be some there, I'm sure. But I'm not sure what other Reputation would be added or what you've heard.
I would really just like I want to see a player be able to go to do the Ghost Hollow mission and fight alongside Ninetales because they've worked with them, Go do the Orison missions and be able to fight on the wrong side. Not because you like selected a correct mission, but because you showed up there and they know who you are. Like that, it doesn't feel like we're that connected to the factions that were around just yet.
Yep, that is true. Yeah, we did see something about that recently though. So hopefully we get like at least a first iteration of that. That would be really cool. It kind of feels like that a little bit, like when you go to a bunker and you have security there, that you feel like they're kind of helping you. I guess that's the only aspect of that we have at the moment. But it'd be really cool if it was maybe in reverse, like you said, to where you go there and
And even then, I'm pretty sure. Actually, I don't know if you can have Ninetales Reputation just yet. But like if you have some reputation with some criminal, whether it be like Ruto or
Hmm.
somebody else who gets you into the negative, and then you go to like the local security missions, I
Yeah.
don't think you get blocked out of those. I don't think they react to you any differently. So it's like it
Yeah.
still feels very systemic, less kind of immersive. I
Yeah.
hope we can see that this year. I think that's something that we could expect, though.
Yeah, I mean, definitely being someone who came from MMOs, who's grinded out his fair share of reputation across different games, it's definitely cool whenever you can go somewhere and you're either receiving better rewards, or you're able to buy things that you can't buy from somewhere else,
Yeah,
things like that. Like that, those are really cool things, and of course, I'm definitely looking forward to.
yeah, same. Let's talk about missions. You mentioned the mission features team, and they've been doing much more stuff than I think any year prior. What are some of the mission stuff you're excited to hear from them, and do you think we'll see them this year?
There were some that are actually looking good for this year. Let me see. I got new missions. The heist missions. Like we're starting to see, because the hacking has been done for a couple months now as well. So being able to see something with hacking, I think that's something we will definitely see maybe soon. I don't know about 320, but possibly there too.
You think they might get
Um,
hacking in?
I'm thinking so, yeah, because one of the things that was holding them hacking was because of the Squadron 42 aspect of it, but even that's been showing that it's moving through them. So I'd really like to see some form of hacking, whether it's even if it's just in a mission, like like you're having to go there and I mean, we kind of see it with like finding a code on someone, but I mean actual hacking to where you're
Yeah,
looking through and
the actual
going through.
gameplay.
Yeah, so hacking is one of those things that's kind of just been sitting there. I mean, we heard about it what 2 years ago now. It's been
Oh yeah,
whenever they were actually showing stuff on ISC for it, like the actual possible gameplay for it. I mean, that's something I've just been looking forward to just because of what it can bring to missions. Like that's going to be really cool.
yeah. That I remember they introduced an idea about it, and then they kind of had to go back to the drawing board because they realized they could do
Mhm.
something much better. I'm glad that they
Yeah,
did. That's part of Star Citizen's development. That's why we get
yeah,
to see things iterated on so much. But I'm also really hoping, yeah, that we can see some hacking in the game this year, because that that would then go towards the security stations. It would go towards
hmm,
whatever missions they put in. It would eventually go towards the ship systems. Like
yep.
hacking's one of those things that can spread out in the game, which would be really cool to see.
Yeah, across many different things, absolutely. One of the missions I'm not quite sold on though is this new salvaging where you have to kind of like salvage to hide the ship. I mean, it sounds cool, but I just don't know how often. Like, I don't feel like it's something that's really gonna be catchy for a lot of people. Definitely people who were definitely into going out and salvaging the hulls, and I understand why they did it. It's because people were just grabbing the boxes and leaving, so this gives them another reason to stick around and try to earn it. I just don't know if it's because of how long it takes, if it's something that's really going to be catchy, but I could be
It
wrong on that.
it feels like it could be a beginner focused mission, but it's also just
Hmm.
very much made for the current alpha. Like
Hmm.
once we get to a point where salvage is it's pretty solidified and people have a lot to do and a lot to pay attention to, how
Hmm.
often are people really going to want to take a mission where they have to go and scrape the hull off a ship and then that's it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can see it as like a good chill way because there are people that just love to salvage just to have a chill night.
Yeah,
So to be able to have a ship that is dedicated in a spot where you can just get the mission, go do it, those people are going to enjoy this, I think.
yeah. I'll be interested in seeing how it expands out. And I guess everything that they introduce as a mission now, we should also think of the fact that it might be a module, something that they
Hmm.
can add in with some other things. But
Right.
I'm wondering how the process goes of the security showing up and being like, wow, we can't see the outside of this ship. Oh, well,
Hmm.
guess job's lost. Like, we won't go inside and check.
See you later.
Yeah, so it's a fun little like gamified idea for the missions, but I'm
Yeah.
also I'm skeptical about how long it'll last.
Yeah. The resource rush, I'm kind of curious to see in action too, how that's going to work out. So that
Right.
should be interesting.
They haven't really talked about that though. Do you think that's
Mm-mm.
pushed past 3.20?
Mm-mm. I think we could see it
Yeah.
because I mean the work shows ended in June, just like the consignments. I think those the consignment missions as well. I think those are two things that we could probably see in three. We should see in 320. I think so.
Why do you think they're not on the release view?
Maybe they're still testing some things. Like I know especially for anything. Well, maybe not the mining resource so much, but definitely the consignments. Um, Elliot's had a few issues with performance, making things not be where they're supposed to be or appearing when they're supposed to appear. I know I've worked with him a couple times, like, especially with the delivery missions. I was like sending him messages saying, hey, you know, this particular location, the box is actually spawning under the mining outpost and not in the spot where it's supposed to be. And he was always telling me it's performance. We're trying, anytime you're going to see these issues with delivery missions, it's because of performance. And I'm like, okay, so fair enough. So that, I think performance impacts them on what's going to come and what, if they're going to have to push something or not.
The dreaded performance.
Yep.
Always striking. Always getting us that instability.
For sure.
And we've also just recently heard about, just yesterday or a couple days ago, cargo missions. I think they might have mentioned them once last year, but we haven't really been made privy to what they mean by cargo missions. Do you think that's something that they're going to try and get in when they do the cargo refactor or with the Hull C, or what do you think of those?
It'd be nice if it's with the Hull C, because that would definitely give you one thing to do with the Hull C at the very least. I mean, it seems kind of crazy just to have one thing to do with it, but I don't know what a cargo mission is really going to be until we see it. It would be great to have something where you're not having to put money in, like you said, for that risk. But again, it's probably not going to pay super great either. But if they could have reputation with that, then maybe it would be worthwhile at the end of later stages.
Yeah, it would be fantastic for people to just be able to go in, get a contract to move something around. I don't know, there would have to be something that happens if you don't complete the contract, but I can't. That would probably be where reputation comes in. So they can't just keep hitting players monetarily for some kind of failure. Reputation seems like a nice soft landing for if you fail something and they just ding you down a couple points.
Yeah, I mean, what I think I know I'm just a player and I don't, I don't quite know everything about, development and everything. But to me, one thing you could do to really get players to interact would be to have reputation for even mining or salvaging, and just to have it to where if you do some missions for these, you're able to go and see a vendor and pick up like a better laser, like a better mining laser or a better, module, something that you have to have the rep in order to purchase.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that is something they can do now, or if it's something that would have to be, worked on, but anything that deals with reputation that will give you a reward is like, even if it's, for some of the reputations we already have, you could get a better sniper rifle or a better piece of armor that's just slightly better, just something to give people something to chase, even if you have to pay money credits for it, still.
And they don't have to make a new asset for it, just slightly better stats. Just like make this Helix 2 laser have 10% less instability. That'd be huge. Exactly. People would work their freaking butts off for that.
Yep, I know I would, because I'm definitely, me and my wife, we're carrot chasers. Like, we will go after that stuff all day.
And they could do that with every component, every asset, all of that in different star systems. Like, there's so much. This is all the beta stuff, though. That's when it's going to get so exciting to see them start to expand on the actual customization of the game and less of the features. Although this stuff is pretty cool, but it's slow.
Definitely. Very slow.
All right. How about locations? We know about underground facilities. We know that caves just got a rework in sand, and they were working on rock caves. Outposts have been being worked on for God knows how long. And the derelicts we talked about that we were expecting in 320. What are you expecting from locations over the next several months?
I mean, I didn't think the underground facilities would be done, because there's just so much going into those, whether it's the mission features team or just even more assets that they're working on and stuff. I don't even think they're in gray box yet. They may be on gray box for some of the floors, but not quite all of them. But I definitely don't see those. The caves, what would be nice about the caves is if they would add missions to those. If they could at least do that, that would be big. That would be definitely something that would be cool. As far as the derelicts, I thought those were going to be in 320. I don't know now. Maybe 321 we'll see some, but I kind of feel like they've been taking from that. So, like they've moved that team from that, and the only thing I can think that that they've moved them to would be the underground facilities. but even those are scheduled to not come out until, or not the work not to be done until December. And then the building interiors. That's the other thing they're working
Right.
on. So that kind of dovetails into one of my only prediction theories that I kind of have.
What is that?
That we could possibly see at CitizenCon them put apartments for sale, like real money apartments. Like we might see one of the very first, like they're going to say, hey, this is what the building team's been working on. Whether it'll be done or not, I don't know, but I could see them putting some for sale because housing is such a big moneymaker across other MMOs. It's just crazy. So it's kind of hard for me to believe they haven't gotten into that yet.
I would hope they wouldn't do it early though. Like I'm all on board. You guys got to make money. Mm-hmm. Anything that you can do to decouple that from selling ships is great.
Yep.
But maybe not right now.
Yeah, that's the only reason I was thinking that maybe that's what the team's working on, to try to get something in there, like some kind of, maybe it's one building, maybe it's definitely apartments would be the first thing, but something that maybe they're trying to get ready. I don't know if they have time to get everything ready, but they have been kind of going through. And when you're talking about the Montreal team, they're pretty quick with things. Yeah. So like, that's kind of my crazy thing. I would hope they wouldn't do it without actually us saying, hey, you can go there today. They're available for sale today. That's the best case scenario, but they don't always do that. So,
Yeah, well, we will see. Whatever happens at CitizenCon this year is going to be pretty wild. We will get to that.
Definitely.
Quick question from chat. Do you think that the underground facilities that they're bringing in, obviously they've been priming them for Pyro and talking about them in terms of Pyro, do you think they'll also replace the ones in Stanton though? Or will they keep those old legacy models?
I think they're going to keep the old legacy models just because they're there. There's something to do. I mean, there are people, I know people are tired of grinding them out, but I think they'll probably leave them there just for variety. Whether or not they're going to be introducing them into Stanton, I want to say heard that they were, but I don't know where I heard that from. But I could see them showing up here, especially if Pyro is going to be pushed out a little bit, once they get finished, because it doesn't seem like it'd be too much to add them Stanton or Pyro unless they're just like branded a certain way.
Yeah, certain companies, and I can't imagine Bering would have a giant underground facility in Pyro, but maybe they're about that life. Maybe that's where they go to test out their weapons.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, were there any other big features that you wanted to talk about before we move on to ships?
Let's see. Looking through the list, I think we covered most of the big things. We're going to talk about ships now. So yeah, let's do that.
All right. Well, what are you thinking in terms of ships for this year?
The ships, I would say the ships have been one of the things I'm, not really happy about this year, because it doesn't seem like we've seen a lot of movement on it. Definitely the backlog. The backlog is like, I'm definitely on board with them working on the backlog. I'm glad to see the Polaris is on the roadmap, even though it's been more like they're trying to still figure things out with it, and we're not seeing like actual, white box stuff with it yet. But ultimately, the ships themselves, like, we just haven't seen like a lot of movement with those. I mean, I'm not sure why, but and even the ones that are like the unannounced vehicles. Right now, there's currently, I believe, 3 on there, and they're all like smaller looking. If you look at the dates they started versus when they're supposed to be ending, which is around October, they're all small things. So you can tell they're probably variants. That's about the only thing we can kind of gauge from that.
Yeah, they had quite a few unannounced ships and things to talk about in the beginning of the year. I guess 2 of those were the Fury and the Storm. Yep. But we still don't know, I think, maybe 2 or 3 of the other ones they talked about. We have the entire Spirit series, the Santok Yai, Merchantman's on hold, Polaris is entering white box, I think. They're not even talking about the 600i interior rework.
Nope.
They haven't mentioned the X1 in a while, even though they said they were starting on that. The Gatak Rylan was supposed to start after the Santok, so that's not anywhere near.
I got
Halsey. Halsey's definite. We know about that. Are there any other like possibilities for the rest of this year that you can think of that we already know about?
No, not that I could think of. There's rumors of some kind of new Argo, like some kind of Argo cargo variant, maybe. That's the only rumor that I've heard about. but ultimately, yeah, I actually forgot. I wasn't even thinking about the Crusader ship there, but yeah, I'm kind of surprised. I'll be surprised if we don't see at least um, the A1 possibly at 320 or maybe 320.1 as like it comes out after that, because it's very far along at this point.
You think we'll get the A1 before the C1?
Yeah, I think the A1's definitely coming before the C1, even though it doesn't make sense. Like they've definitely been showing the A1, and the C1 is just a cargo variant, so I don't understand. I thought the C1 would be first, but maybe they're trying to,
C1 seems like a base.
Right, exactly. That's what I thought. But I've definitely heard more about the A1 versus the C1. Now maybe they'll both come out together, but again, the C1 looked like it was probably a month or two behind it whenever it came to like what they were working on, whether the gray box and the LED phase of it. So, I don't know. I don't know if they're going to show both or if it's just going to be the A1, but definitely not the E1.
Yeah, the E1 is far gone. I thought that we would probably be seeing them in whatever patch came in the August, September, October timeframe. But yeah, now I'm kind of thinking that they might be end of year IAE releases or something.
There
were rumors of something that was a little like crafting focused, I think, last year, a ground vehicle or something. Do you think we might see any new professions come out of vehicles towards the end of this year?
I honestly don't think that we would see anything like crafting has been thrown around, which I'm glad to see, and I definitely, maybe a concept, like I could definitely see them, even though we hate concepts, but them throwing another concept out there. It's kind of been hinted at that there would be a ship that would be a crafting ship. So, that I have been expecting any time now for one, like a crafting concept to come out. The only thing I wish that we would get is some kind of medical ground vehicle, which, I'd be like completely over the moon for.
That would be cool. A little Ursa ambulance or something.
Yep, exactly. Yep, the Ursa one, like we saw they worked on, that was pretty cool.
Okay,
or not, they had worked on, but the YouTube channel that makes all the all the what if vehicles. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Oh, it's interesting that ships, the outlook on ships is not that great. Especially because obviously when you hear about this game, one of the first things you think of or you hear about is that they're only concerned with selling ships, but they really haven't been going that hard on ships this year, except for I think the Fury was a big one they wanted to get out, and then the Fury was a big one for them. But besides that, they have not been really hyping up ships that much. The two ships I think they could really hype up, the Banu Merchantman being on delay, and then the Polaris obviously not coming until next year at the earliest. Just kind of putting a message out there that they are full on the features and trying to get the Squadron 42 working.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. The ships, I mean, the game is about ships, and any ship that comes out can like really change things. Like, it's crazy how one ship can do things. So for them to be kind of quiet on ships right now is kind of surprising, honestly. But I think maybe they caught so much slack when the Galaxy came out last year about it. I mean, you started seeing videos come out about the backlog, like morphologists saying take 10 years or whatever to get that backlog out. I mean, and they're not wrong. I mean, it would take a long time. So maybe they're finally taking that in, thinking about that and trying to be careful as to what they're doing. So
maybe I feel like they never really care that much, but it's possible. What do you think of the pace of all this right now? I mean, we kind of talked about that towards the beginning, but looking at everything that we just talked about, how the first half of the year went, how the second half of the year is looking, and with the context of like server meshing and Squadron, what are your feelings on like their pace and just how the year's been going?
I feel like there's a lot going on that they're just not saying. Like, I feel like, I mean, to have so many employees that they're in all these different teams working on things, I don't feel like, they definitely haven't shared everything that they want. And I think, there's a reason for that. It's because they're trying to hold things a little closer to the vest. I keep expecting Chris Roberts to throw out another, letter anytime now, given all this, false hope. But I mean, honestly, it does feel like for as many people and teams working on things as they have, and the lack of communication on things, only thing I can think is that they're just really holding out for CitizenCon. And like, I mean, I hate to be like, oh, that person is going to say, yeah, we're going to get all this great news at CitizenCon, but I mean, that's what it's feeling like.
It's feeling a bit like 2020 to me. That was, is that around when you joined? That was a little after you joined?
I joined slightly after 2020. Yeah.
Okay. 2020 was, we were around this time in the year. I would say maybe a month before this time. And the game had been previously predicted to be going to beta, Squadron 42, going to beta that summer. So like there was no communication on that. We didn't know what was going on. We knew they were working on it. It was important. It was reaching some sort of level, and we were getting nothing. So for like 4 or 5 months, they were building up this video that they were going to release to give us all an update on Squadron 42. We were like, okay, we're waiting for this. We're waiting for this. Where is this? When is it going to come out? And finally, they released it at CitizenCon, and it didn't really give us that much info, but it feels a lot like that year in that we know this stuff is happening. We know it's difficult and we know it's important, but we're still not really hearing much about it. And now we're putting all of our hopes kind of on CitizenCon, which overhypes the event. I do really hope that they have something good to share there, whether it be about server meshing or Squadron.
Yeah, what I hope is it's not just, they're not giving us dates, but they're actually going to show, they're going to say, hey, this is what's here. And if they give a date, it's only like 3 months out, possibly. But, I mean, after watching your video, like the past Citizen Cons, like I'm almost like scared to even see what they're going to do for this one, because I feel like they're going to go really big because they're back live. But, are they going to, overshoot? I don't know.
I think they've definitely learned some lessons. I hope they. I'm rooting for them this CitizenCon. This could be a huge event for them. It could be the start of a big lead up to hopefully a good launch for Squadron 42. But it feels like wishful thinking. They need a win. They need a big win.
They do, and it'd be really nice to see some something definitive on Squadron for sure.
Yep. Speaking of CitizenCon, though, what are you expecting this year? What are your hopes? What are your realistic expectations?
I hope, like I said, Squadron 42. I hope they can say for sure that they know it's going to be out in 2024. And the only reason I say that is because we're sitting here waiting for all this stuff to come into the PU, which is what I care more about. And so we're not going to get half the stuff that we could be getting until Squadron is passed. And so I look forward to something along those lines. I look forward to hearing something about Pyro and server meshing. I really want to hear that they're going to be dropping it in Evocati by, definitely by the end of the year. Whether or not that's going to happen now is, I'm not going to lie, it's a little scary because they're just not mentioning it at all. Not even that Road to Pyro thing. So, I'm definitely not thinking it is, but it'd be nice to hear and not just see, oh, this is what we're doing with it now. I mean, what you're doing with it's great, but if you're not going to show us, something, you're not going to say, hey, it's ready for testing or it's almost ready for testing, then that's going to be a letdown.
Would you want to see them somehow demo server meshing at CitizenCon?
I mean, that would be nice if they're ready to do that, but then even a demo, I mean, you can only take that, so far, because doing it on, we've all seen where things can be, shown on a demo in a contained environment. That's one thing, but on live, that's completely different. Yeah.
So I always think about how would they show server meshing off at CitizenCon, which is why I'm not thinking that could be their big thing. But I do hope that they show us a combination of a lot of the stuff we talked about today, engineering, maybe even Pyro itself, the UGFs, possibly some new missions, AI interaction. I want to see all the kind of stuff that we've seen in the past ISCs and at CitizenCon last year in actual game environment, working in a way that we are like, okay, this can launch in the next 2 patches. That's all I need. Plus, like you said, a release date for Squadron.
Oh, and Tony Z. We got to see Tony Z. It's been 2 years. So.
Well, we got to see him, but we got to see something. Like, we saw him, I think. I still haven't watched the, what is it called? The talk that he did with, I think, Chris Reiniger and somebody else at CitizenCon 2021. It's like the last time we saw him. I still haven't, I think it was called System of Thought or something. I still haven't watched that whole video because it was just talking. And I would really, really love to see the economy put into realistic terms in regards to the game. At the CitizenCon.
Yep, and those features were showing that they were looking like there's like a couple of features tied to that, and they were all showing good for June, and then they just got pushed back to December recently. So with it being pushed back to December and not October, that kind of like scares me as far as like, are they going to be able to show anything at CitizenCon for that? I mean, or is it still they still just waiting? And if they're waiting on anything, I think it's probably going to be server meshing, like because I know a big part of that what they have to do is performance, and I know performance now can't handle it.
It's too bad. If when you look at some of the features like that, the economy, and some of the other stuff we've talked about today, it just feels very slow. Whereas some of the other stuff feels like it's going very well, like locations, not even Squadron 42 stuff, just like certain teams feel like they really get the stuff done. And I know not all work is equal, but you just can't shake the feeling that some of it does feel very, I hate calling it slow. I really do. I know that they're putting in a lot of work to it, and there are a lot of dependencies and things that pop up without you noticing. It's just a bummer to see the crawl at times.
Yeah. I always try to keep the teams in mind, I definitely never want to try to come down on a dev or a team in particular and say, oh, they should be doing better or whatever, because I'm very cognitive of that. But, things do seem slow. And I think they probably seem slow for them too, because I mean, if you think about it, they announced it'll be 2 years, October, November, that they, decided to focus on Squadron. I mean, 2 years, that's just crazy that, and we're still waiting to hear something.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Let's end on a positive note. What is your best case scenario for the rest of the year?
Best case scenario, we see Bounty Hunting version 2. I think that would be a huge boost for the game. That's one of the things I'm definitely looking forward to. I'd say that over Cargo even, because Cargo I think is still going to be so, like we talked about, so iffy. Like, is it going to be super great in its beginning? Vehicle tracker beams are great and all, but they're going to be very situational. So I don't see that as being this huge thing that's really going to do anything. But to me, the two big things are engineering, bounty hunting. If we could see those this year, like this year would just be like it ended with a bang.
It'd be nice to see bounty hunting come in. It feels like the first profession that takes that next step up to include more AI and stuff like that. That'd be great. And that also means an automatic update to the quantum simulation with virtual AI. So exactly. I'm with you on that. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this talk. I think we got through a lot of very good stuff, and I hope that we see a lot of that very good stuff this year. I really do. Things are clearly being bottlenecked by Squadron 42 and server meshing, and I think a lot less clearly things are just generally slow, and some of that communication is just not making it to us to understand why. But as always, man, I appreciate your work that you do on YouTube, bringing us the news of the progress tracker. Thank you so much for joining me and the birds apparently for the show today. And before you head off, can you let everybody know again where they might be able to find your content?
I'm on YouTube, Castle Black Gaming. I put out videos there. I put out a few each week. Usually it's reviews, loadouts. I also cover some hot topics. I try to stay middle of the road when it comes to anything that's kind of sketchy. So, you're not getting one side or the other. I try to look at things from both sides. But yeah, if you like that kind of content, especially in a positive environment, look for me there.
Awesome. And that'll be down in the show notes as always, folks. I'd like to thank you again for having a listen or a watch if you're here on YouTube, or if you're here live with us. Every once in a while we host this live, but as always, our supporters are able to come in here, ask questions, host live, and if the guest has time, answer some or have a chat afterwards. If you'd like to get involved with that, YouTube channel memberships or Patreon are the way to go. But besides that, this has been The Launch Sequence. I've been your host, Space Tomato, episode 109, and I will see you all next week. Thanks again, folks.
Take care.